Today's video is brought to you by Manscaped.com, the global men's lifestyle brand that is shaking up the grooming world. All right, I got a couple of games I want to talk about today. Both happen to be in the SEC. We're going to move on to some other game predictions later on. But LSU on the road at Florida and Missouri on the road at South Carolina. Now, both of these games involve teams that are technically still alive to win the SEC, and of course that would mean an automatic bid to the playoffs. I'm talking about LSU and Missouri. LSU does have 3 losses. They just got blown out by Alabama. One of their 3 losses is a non-conference loss, so they're currently sitting on just 2 losses, and there's sort of a whole group of SEC teams sitting with 2 conference losses, and technically all of those 2 loss teams still have a possibility of making the SEC championship game, including LSU. And when you look at the Missouri and South Carolina game, South Carolina's eliminated most likely from any playoff type scenarios because they've got 3 losses. They're 6-3, but Missouri, believe it or not, somehow is 7-2. Now, I don't think Missouri's very good, and the only way Missouri is getting into the playoffs is if they were to somehow win the SEC, which would be unlikely. They'd have to first get there. They're grouped in with that group of 2 lost teams, and then they would have to beat whoever it is that's there. So technically, both those teams still alive for the playoffs. I want to talk about both of these games. Shout out to today's video sponsor, Manscaped. All right, now Halloween is behind us. We got Thanksgiving, and then Christmas is right around the corner. And you know what that means. It's time to tighten up those jingle bells. We're right in the middle of football season, and whether you're talking about the NFL, college football, or fantasy, there's one thing we can all agree on. It is an absolute must that you take care of your game balls. Do not be that 5-star dummy that leaves your personal grooming habits on the end of the bench. 5-star dummy. Check out the Manscaped Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, your ultimate grooming playbook. This all-star lineup has everything you need to stay sharp on and off the field. Up first, we've got the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, and this is your star player. This trimmer handles all your below-the-waist needs with precision and power, whether it's for game day or date night. With next-gen dual skin-safe blades, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is designed for top-tier performance. You start with the upgraded trimmer blade for a clean, easy trim, then switch on over to the foil blade for a smooth, bare finish. It's really like having 2 trimmers in one. The all-new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra also has a bigger LED light to help illuminate those tricky spots and a dual temperature feature. No more missed assignments in your grooming routine. But wait, there's more. The Weed Whacker 2.0, that's right, say goodbye to the bothersome nose hairs with the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra Kit, which comes complete with the Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose hair trimmer. It's also waterproof, cordless, and rechargeable, and guess what? Built with the same skin-safe technology. This thing's designed to tackle those nose and ear hairs with ease. You're also going to get both the Crop Soother and the Crop Preserver. Post-shave, you can show your MVPs some love with the Crop Soother Ball Aftershave Lotion and Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant. Keep fresh and comfortable through all 4 quarters and into overtime. And just for fun, the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra also includes not 1, but 2 free gifts. You get the Boxers 2.0 and the Shed 2.0 toiletry bag. That's a winning combo. Go ahead and join the over 10 million men who have trusted Manscaped to get them game day ready. Head on over to manscaped.com, enter the promo code TheUncleLou, and they're going to give you free shipping and 20% off. That's promo code TheUncleLou, only at manscaped.com. All right, let's start with the earlier game. LSU on the road at Florida in the Swamp. Both of these teams coming off of blowout losses last week. LSU at home got just completely overwhelmed by Alabama and Jalen Milroe, right? He just ran wild, almost 200 yards rushing for Mildew, 4 touchdowns. The game got away from LSU quick, and that thing was over. Florida on the road at Texas. Right after announcing that they're keeping Billy Napier as head coach, right on cue, Florida goes out and lays a complete egg, gets destroyed on the road in Austin. Big win by Texas over Florida. I don't think either one of these teams is making. I don't think LSU's making the playoffs. We talked at the beginning that I guess mathematically they're still alive. When you look at the possible tiebreak scenarios within the SEC, I don't see one that involves LSU making the SEC championship game. And because they also have a non-conference loss in addition to their 2 conference losses, I think it's kind of over for them. Florida appears to be in complete and total give-up mode after the effort or lack of effort we saw on the road last week. At Texas, Lagway, of course, who got injured in the Georgia game, didn't play last week against Texas, so they're down to their 3rd-string quarterback, Werner, last week. We'll see what happens with Lagway this week. I kind of feel like if I'm Lagway especially, I'm not playing anymore this season unless I'm 100% healthy. There seems to be nothing to gain, really, from playing Lagway going forward. He's gotten a ton of experience this year. That's a big positive heading into next year. Right. There's no win that Florida could get this season that really would mean anything. Florida's already made the decision on Billy Napier. You don't need like a win to keep him or a loss to get rid of him. Like, we know he's coming back next year no matter what. LSU, because mathematically they're still alive to make the SEC championship game, even though I don't think anybody really believes that's going to happen, I do believe has more motivation to show up to play in this game. And let's be real, LSU over the course of the season has just been a better team than Florida. Brian Kelly's catching a lot of heat this week for, several different things. Another big game loss for big game Brian Kelly, who seems to do nothing but lose big games. I do think Brian Kelly's a pretty good coach. I mean, you don't coach for as long as he has at the highest level and have that kind of a winning percentage if you're terrible. Even going back to Notre Dame, I mean, he averaged 10 wins a year for 12 years at Notre Dame. Anywhere in the Power 5, Notre Dame, any conference, whatever, you're averaging 10 wins a year for 10, 12 years. You're a decent coach. I don't think anybody's saying Brian Kelly's terrible, doesn't know what he's doing, whatever. But there appears to be, there might be a ceiling on Brian Kelly. Now, that has nothing to do with this game or this season. It felt like pointing that out since we were talking about Napier. We'll see. LSU's putting together what looks like a pretty good recruiting class for next year. But anyway, LSU's just been a better team here this season. Florida is awful. Let's just call it like it is. LSU has dominated this series. These 2 teams play every year, or have played every year going back a long time now. We'll see if that continues kind of in this new era of the SEC that we're in now. But they do play this year. They're playing again next year at the Swamp. This one, is there 2 swamps? I guess LSU's technically not in a swamp. It's Death Valley. So this one's in the Swamp next year at LSU. But LSU has won, I believe, 7 of the last 10 in this series. And I expect LSU to make it 8 of the last 11 or whatever it is. I think LSU will win the game. LSU's favored by 4.5, and the over-under is 54.5. I don't know how Florida's going to score. Florida hasn't had a very good offense this year, no matter who's been playing quarterback. They're now down to Werner, their 3rd string that they got from, Yale, I guess. And LSU's offense has struggled at times this year, too. And Florida, not that their defense is great, but I do think the defensive side of the ball for Florida right now, I think, is a little bit better than the offensive side of the ball. So, I like the under 54.5 points. LSU's a 4.5 point favorite. I like them to cover that spread. I think LSU probably wins this game, 31-10, 31-14, somewhere in that range there. I'm going to take LSU to win and cover the points. Now, on to the primetime game, which I think has the potential to be a better game. Missouri has looked good a couple of times this year, but overall, they've been pretty disappointing. They were ranked in the top 10 entering the season after having a really good year last year that included a bowl win against, I think it was Ohio State, wasn't it? The New Year's Six game. Brady Cook was back on offense. Luther Burden at wide receiver. Theo Weiss at wide receiver. They did lose a running back. Lost some defensive coaches and things like that. But high expectations entering the season for Missouri. And even though they're sitting there at 7-2, it's really hard to describe Missouri's season as anything other than disappointing. They've played 2 good teams, 3, I guess. I think they might have beat Vandy early in the year, and you look back now and say maybe that was their best win. And they did get a win against Oklahoma this last week. Oklahoma's bad, but for Missouri, that was a big win because, the Big 8, Big 12 rivalry from when Missouri and Oklahoma were both in the same league, and Missouri beats them. But the 2 best teams Missouri has played, they've lost by a combined score of like 74 to 10. It just hasn't been close. They got destroyed by Texas A&M. They got destroyed by Alabama, 34-0. Again, the combined scoring in those two games was something like 74-10. And if you look at where Missouri is ranked, whether it's AP coaches or more importantly the playoff poll, Missouri's only chance, and I mean only chance, to get into the college football playoff would be to get into the SEC championship game somehow and win it. And that might sound far-fetched, and it probably is far-fetched, but again, they only have 2 conference losses, same as Georgia, Bama, Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee. After they lose on Saturday, will have 2 conference losses. Either Texas or Texas A&M, whichever one loses that game at the end of the year, is going to have 2 conference losses. And one of those 2 lost teams is getting into the SEC championship game. It's probably going to come down to the 4th tiebreaker, which is your conference opponent's winning percentage. And from some articles I've read, it looks like that would be Alabama or Georgia, although I don't myself personally, I've got no idea how to even start to go about figuring all that out. But anyway, they do play on the road this week at South Carolina. So you have the Battle of Columbia's here. Of course, Missouri and Columbia, Missouri, South Carolina, and Columbia, South Carolina. The Gamecocks hosting this one at 4:15, and they're a 12-point favorite over Missouri. South Carolina's actually ranked ahead of Missouri. They're 21. Missouri is 23. South Carolina's 6-3. South Carolina should probably be 7-2. They beat LSU. I have tried real hard in the 10 years I've been on here not to blame referees specifically for losses. The LSU South Carolina game is the closest I've ever come. That was a horrible call on that interception with the blocking penalty there or whatever. It was just a terrible call. So South Carolina, I'm sorry, there's a cold going around down here. South Carolina at 6-3 could easily be 7-2 and themselves be involved in that 2-loss mess of teams in the SEC. But more importantly here in this game, South Carolina has been playing its best football now. They've gotten better as the season has gone along. They've got one of the best defenses in the SEC, particularly one of the best front fours. Even their quarterback, who almost nobody had ever heard of entering the season, that's Urkel. We called him Urkel. He had the glasses on. I think he's got contacts now, but he started out the season wearing like the old school sports goggles. Everybody was calling him Urkel. Lenore Sellers is his name. Rocket Sanders at running back. They've been one of the more surprisingly good teams in the SEC this year, I think. We tend to focus on the teams that kind of bottom out, like, wow, Florida was terrible, or wow, Michigan was terrible this year, or wow, Florida State was terrible this year. South Carolina was somebody that not a lot of people talked about entering the season. And if you did talk about them, you talked about, well, probably going to be about a 500 team. Maybe they can make a bowl game, that kind of thing. Turns out they're a pretty good team. Nearly beat Alabama on the road earlier this year. They've got a big game coming up with Clemson at the end of the year that looks more than winnable, right? South Carolina right now, I think, is playing better football than Clemson. Now, we'll see what happens at the end of the year. Crazy things happen in those rivalry games. But if you'd asked me 6 weeks ago, you remember Clemson lost in week 1, and then they just went on this tear where they were beating everybody they played by 40 points. Now, comes to find out, everybody they were beating up on was absolutely terrible. Weren't real sure about that at the time. You just say, whoa, where was this Clemson team when they played Georgia, blowing people out? Carolina had lost a couple of games. If you'd asked me 6 weeks ago, I'd have said, oh, yeah, Clemson will beat South Carolina. So I think it's a home game for Clemson, too. If I had to pick that game right now, I would pick South Carolina to upset them on the road at Clemson. That's going to be a great game. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. Missouri, I think, is massively overrated, even at 23 or 24 or 25 or wherever they're at in any poll you want to look at. Started in the top 10. They've fallen all the way down 23 to 45. I don't think they're one of the best 25 teams in the country. When you watch them play, nothing stands out. They're not very good. Even Luther Burton hasn't really had that great of a year. They really missed that running back from last year. The defense is not what it was last year. I just don't think they're a very good team. South Carolina, on the other hand, South Carolina, I think, is probably one of the best 15 teams in the country right now. Now, I'm not arguing for them to get into a 12-team playoff or to be ranked 15th or anything. I'm just saying we've all watched college football a long time. We know that sometimes a team is a lot better at the end of the season than they are at the beginning. Sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes they're a lot better in the beginning and get worse at the end. South Carolina's a pretty good team right now. I actually think they win this game and it won't be close. The line is 12. It's a very difficult place to play, Columbia, South Carolina. It's not a night game. So Missouri catches a break there, but I like South Carolina to win this one and cover too. So I like both favorites. I like LSU on the road as a small favorite. I like South Carolina at home as a bigger favorite, -12. I think South Carolina might win this one by 3 touchdowns. They're red hot right now. Anyway, there you go. My thoughts on a couple of games. We'll do several more of these prediction videos over the next day or two, heading into week 12 already of the 2024 college football season. Anyway, make sure you check out manscaped.com. The link is in the description down below. Promo code Uncle Lou. Appreciate you watching. Have a good morning.